Hi, I'm Bill Giebler. I'm back. I hope you were here for a data presentation a little bit ago. I'm really excited about this panel. Very important conversation. We're calling it Navigating the MAHA Age, an insider take. And we've got a few insiders here for this conversation. And I was trying to listen in that last panel. They got into the politics and some of the concerns a little bit, and we'll get into that as well. But we have folks here who are pretty close to RFK Jr. and can tell us, to the degree we can know the future, we're going to talk about the future. So, Vani Hari, I want to start with you. Vani Hari, also AKA Food Babe, food activist. 10 years ago, you were testifying in front of the Senate. Since then, you've started a brand, a plant-based protein supplement company. I think you're a good person to start with because there's a tremendous alignment between the MAHA message and the intentions of this industry, and the intentions of this industry that have existed for 40, 50 years. And it's sort of the reason for being for a lot, professional reason for being for a lot of the people in this room. And yet, when you make it into an acronym and it's MAHA, it can be a trigger word for a lot of people. And so that's one of the things we're feeling a lot in the industry and in the political situation. So in some ways, it feels like the right message from the wrong people. For a lot of people. I'm not saying that that's it, but I think that's one of the challenges we feel in this industry, right message, wrong people, and I'd love for you to speak to that if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everybody. I have been so jaded by politics, and I just have to tell you some background. I mean, I campaigned for Al Gore, I campaigned for John Kerry, two losers, right? And I was a delegate for President Obama 2 times. I used my delegate status to actually protest in front of the Secretary of Agriculture because he didn't follow through on his promise to label genetically engineered ingredients, which I know so many people here today care about. And I think you use the political environment and the political willpower of who is in office to your advantage. And right now, we have the biggest advantage ever, where at the highest levels of leadership, we are talking about the issues that I have been fighting for over a decade. Getting chemicals out of our food, the chemicals that you, being a natural, organic food company, have purposely removed and prohibited from your products, right? Now we have a president who is actually talking about it in the joint address just a few days ago on the national stage to both Congress and Senate, and it's an opportunity that I've never seen before. And to allow a partisan viewpoint to enter the stage in this opportunity that we've never had before is so maddening to me, because poison is not partisan. Children who have cancer don't know whether you're Democrat or Republican. We have the worst life expectancy period of any other developing nation. We have 38% of our preteens who are pre-diabetic, 15% having fatty liver disease when it used to be 0. We have 7 million children being diagnosed with ADHD. But we still have American food companies using ingredients that are banned or regulated heavily in other countries in the products that they serve us here in the United States, where they make better, safer products for everyone else. And that needs to change. And now that topic is at the highest levels of leadership. And I just beg everyone in this room, and I'm not going to go much longer because I want everyone to have an opportunity to talk about this specific issue, because I just beg everybody in this room, this is a moment of bipartisanship. We have West Virginia, who just passed a ban on artificial food dyes in the entire state, the first state to do this. And this would have never happened had it not been from the bubbling up grassroots at the state level to make that happen, where it was a majority of a vote. And And then we have, red number 3 getting banned by the FDA. That would have never happened had it not been for a Republican senator from Alabama who questioned, thank you, the FDA, right? We have an opportunity that we've never had before, and it's because, again, we have both sides of the aisle talking about this together, and we've awakened the entire country to these issues that many of us in this room have been fighting for our entire lives. And it is a moment to come together to solve these issues. So thank you.
That's great, Bonnie. Thank you. I think we might come back to how to make that a nonpartisan issue, because it feels largely like it is at this point. And so
I don't see anything partisan being discussed.
Yeah, well, I'll go to you, Callie. So we've got Callie Means here, founder of TrueMed, co-author of Good Energy with his sister Casey Means, and food policy, food systems policy, and health expert, and in policy and advocacy. You've got a lot of experience in government and elsewhere as an entrepreneur. The message is not partisan. The messengers might be, and I think that's what we run into. But what I want to ask you, Callie, is even where there's a lot of agreement on the what of, let's go bigger, let's go to the Trump policy. There's agreement on the what of Trump policy, for instance, maybe reshoring of manufacturing by way of tariffs. There's probably more agreement on that as a concept until you get to the how, and then there's just less enthusiasm about how some of these things are done. My question for you, Callie, is can we trust, I guess I'm asking you to pull out your political crystal ball, can we trust Donald Trump to follow through on this? He said, yes, RFK, yes, MAHA, let's do this. We're excited, Vonnie is excited about this message. Is it going to sustain? What's going to happen here?
There's 2 reasons you should trust President Trump to make good on this generational promise and what are we talking about? We are talking about putting the brands here. People that are fighting for healthy food, people that are fighting for healthy supplementation, people that are fighting for root cause health, putting them at the center of medicine, where today 95% of the $4.9 trillion of medicine spending right now is on interventions after people get sick, is on the fact that people are being poisoned by ultra-processed food, by toxic food, by our environmental factors, by overproliferation of drugs and toxins in our drugs, and that they are then being managed diseases, and that's how the medical system is making money. Del and I and Vonnie have been in Bobby's loose kitchen cabinet. I've had an insight. I actually connected Bobby to President Trump hours after the Butler assassination attempt, and had a small window into their discussions, and they bonded over this issue hours after President Trump almost was millimeters away from being shot in the head. And they talked about, after that assassination attempt, about the generational opportunity to have this presidency be the time that the devastating rise of childhood chronic disease and chronic disease in general will reverse. They talked emotionally for hours, not about political horse trading, but about why the hell 38% of teens right now have prediabetes in the United States, why 50% of teens are overweight or obese, and that's like 2% in Japan, why U.S. life expectancy is 6 years less than the Italians, and we spend 4 times more per capita on healthcare spending when we're not lazier than Italians. I love Italians, but we're not lazier than them. There's something clearly wrong, and they bonded, and I think Del's been close to it and he can tell you, there's a true bond between these 2 men. Whatever you think about them, they have something very admirable where they are warriors, and they have taken a lot of arrows. They've literally been shot at, and they move on, and they want generational change, and President Trump wants generational change. The second reason we should be very confident is that as a political consultant early in my career, we just have to be pragmatic here. The politics drive the policy. The politics drive the policy. I don't want to speak for Del, but Del met with President Trump with Bobby in 2016. And they talked about President Trump not listening. I personally don't really blame President Trump for that. There's a lot of prioritizations that he has to do. Del might have a different opinion, but right now when Del and Bobby and the Army is speaking, There's voters behind this. There's a dynamic right now where MAHA moms, or people in this audience, where the millions of people that took the jump to vote for President Trump because of this issue, which is very clear, the gender gap closed, independents were 50-50. Nobody would have predicted that 8 years ago. Young people 50-50, who would have predicted that? So you had MAHA voters come, so there's a real political coalition. And this is politics, right? So Bobby has a true coalition behind him. There's never been a cabinet secretary in modern American history that has more of an army behind him. MAHA moms mobbed the halls of the Senate. They mobbed the phone calls. So I think we've got a big opportunity, and I just want to make a point, just real quick, about what this means. MAHA to me is a 12-year journey. We are putting a stake in the ground where the future of healthcare is not accepting that kids poison themselves and then jabbing them with Ozempic. I am shocked that at a conference like this, they're saying that we need to bear hug, and Jacqueline before me is saying that we need to embrace Ozempic. That is ridiculous. This room is a zero-sum game. We should absolutely have drugs, but what Bobby is saying, what the mantle here is that the $4.9 trillion we spend on healthcare should go to the most efficacious treatments to prevent and reverse disease. When we talk about the American Academy of Pediatrics saying that the first-line defense for obesity should be Ozempic for 12-year-olds, which is what they say right now, that is an assault on companies in this room, because it's taking $1,600 of taxpayer money a month, accepting that kids are going to be poisoned with ultra-processed food, and then drugging them. It would be much, much cheaper to have medical dollars flow to incentivize all the businesses in this room who are fighting against bad incentives to make their food healthy. Everyone in this room is making trade-offs to put healthy ingredients in their food. The most efficacious way we can move medical dollars to prevent and reverse disease is help entrepreneurs in this room. Yes, drugs should be available, but we should not be partnering with Ozempic. We should be proudly, as an industry, saying that we need to be part of the healthcare mix, and we should have good science explaining why we have a chronic disease crisis, which is because of food and because of supplementation and because of toxins. We should study that, and we should drive trillions of dollars to incentivize differences. So I do not think we should be drinking the Kool-Aid that we should be partnering with Ozempic. I think everyone in this room should be getting their customers to call Congress and support Bobby to drive medical dollars to food and other root cause interventions.
Thank you, Kelly. Passionate.
We don't have a lot of time. Let's try to get it out.
Del, and I want to let you know we are going to go over time. We're going to run a little past the bottom of the hour. But Del Bigtree is next up here. Del is the founder, CEO, I guess, of The Highwire, founder of The Highwire, a popular podcast. Also founder of the ICANN network, the Informed Consent Action Network. And the reason you're here today, though, really is the relationship with Bobby Kennedy, and that for RFK Jr. for president, Del was the communications manager. And so we're really working closely with Robert Kennedy. I want to move to supplement shortly, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to add to those two questions, how do we align, really? And maybe that's a good one. Like, how do we make it a nonpartisan issue? Or should we?
I mean, it's insane that this is a partisan issue. And I think that there's many people at this conference right now that are about to commit suicide if they actually believe in a future of natural health, of vitamins, of supplements. You have a HHS secretary for the first time in any of our lifetime just dealt with measles and said, vitamin A is a treatment for measles. You should be getting vitamin B, C, and D. If you want to have a healthy life, healthy foods play a huge role in how you're going to deal with any infectious disease. Gave the opportunity for everyone in the country, whatever you believe in. If you want vaccines, we're going to make sure they're there, but there are other, ways to live in this world. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I grew up a family of environmentalists. I wasn't vaccinated as a child, not because my parents were conservative Republicans, but because they were hippies from the 1960s. They were crunchy granola I grew up with macrobiotic food. I never went to a doctor. I only saw chiropractors, homeopaths, and we had vitamins as a part of how we move forward. I sat in the Senate and watched, with my brother sitting next to me, raised exactly the same way. We both did not die. And I watched our entire party vote against a man who is simply one of the world's greatest environmentalists, cleaned up our rivers, cleaned up our air, cleaned up our food supply, and now we're about to get him into the government to finally speak for everyone that's at this conference and say, there is a better way forward. There's a holistic life that doesn't involve drugging you with every single issue you have, waiting and having a sick care system that only cares about you once you're dying and can't wait to get you on that conveyor belt. Now, get in early for a diagnosis because we have pre-cancer drugs, pre-diabetes drugs. It's always drugs, 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 and yet everyone here that, at this conference that is making this a political issue, what are you going to do? You're going to stand with the party of pharma? But I sat there with my brother saying, our party today is voting against an environmentalist that we stood with our whole lives, is voting against natural health right now. The Democratic Party just ceded all holistic health over the Republican Party. I don't know why it happened, but Bonnie's right. If we don't seize this moment that we finally have a president letting us speak and is going to change the FDA, change the CDC, and stop all the regulations, stop destroying natural health, but supporting it, if you're going to decide to be partisan, then what are we doing here? I mean, are we that stupid?
This is a nonpartisan issue, but it is unfortunately political right now. I think the Bobby mantra and this mantra that we all agree with, if we close our eyes and don't know who's talking, we all agree with it. But I wanted just to make a partisan point. The fact that President Trump and Bobby Kennedy have seized this, and the fact that Democrats at the joint address sit on their hands when a child who's 13 years old stands up, who just recovered from brain cancer after being poisoned by toxins, which President Trump mentioned for the first time in an address, as Bonnie said, the fact that Democrats are sitting on their hands, this is a stone cold loser for them. So if you are a Democrat, this is an issue where you need to try to out-MAHA the Republicans. That's what we, I think, need to create in society. This is a loser to be against this issue. And if you don't like Bobby Kennedy or Trump, well, tell the Democrats to try to follow suit, because they are going to get crushed if they don't get on board with this. They look terrible right now.
All right, good. Well, great. Let's move then. Let's move from politics and into dietary supplements, because this is the state of supplements. We're talking about supplements, and one of the big concerns right now, and it's not necessarily MAHA, it's not necessarily RFK Jr., but it's DOGE. There's shrinking of federal agencies, including FDA and FTC. One of the big challenges with dietary supplements is there's plenty of regulation. People like to label this as an unregulated industry. It's a very well regulated, but poorly enforced industry. And now there's fewer regulators, or there's likely to be smaller offices doing this regulation.
Disagree with the premise, but.
Is this going to be? Let me put it this way. I'd like to. Everyone in this room and at this conference, or most people here, we often talk about the industry, like the dietary supplement industry, but it's the people who come to these conferences and are part of the trade organizations are part of the responsible dietary supplement industry. And we're all very well aware of this other faction out there that's making unscrupulous brands making products that are intentionally or unintentionally adulterated, and are fraudulent, and in some cases dangerous. Is this going to be a green light for more of that unscrupulous innovation?
I'll be quick. So I disagree with the premise that these things standing in the way of better health is more spending or more bureaucrats at the FDA, and the small cuts that they've made take us back to, I think, 2022 levels. So just point there. I think we're really in this misnomer where more spending on the healthcare system, we spend 4 times more than any other country in the world, is the key to health. It's actually irrational. But getting to, I think there's actually some misinterpretations of what this administration is trying to do. I actually think if you listen, and I have 3 quick points to the supplement industry on this, and my company TrueMed, I know, is working with many of you guys here to unlock HSA, FSA spending. That's point 1. I actually think the supplement industry should be going on offense, that supplementation, vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin D, omega-3s, actually clinically are more efficacious treatments. than a lot of the drugs that are getting a ton of insurance reimbursements. I think one thing Bobby Kennedy and President Trump are saying is that we need to get back to foundational research at the NIH why we're sick, and then that NIH research can actually underlie more eventual insurance reimbursement for the supplement industry. So you can take advantage right now when your customers get a letter of medical necessity recommending root cause interventions like supplementation. But I think thinking about in the coming years more medical reimbursement for supplements. Number two is I don't think it's going to be necessarily a deregulatory environment. You know, they've talked actually very forcefully about toxins in our food and supplements, and they've talked about GRAS standards. Marty McCary for the FDA is testifying today. So I think actually more scrutiny and more analysis of the chemicals and the GRAS standards, you know, that apply to supplementation, and it's going to be a differentiator to have clean chemicals. And number three is a huge principle that's being talked about. You don't need more FDA folks for this, but it's transparency. I think there's going to be a real emphasis on transparency and what's in there and consumers having transparency. So I don't know if that's deregulatory, more regulatory, but I think brands that can show medical efficacious implementations, more transparency, and embrace actually the FDA and having stronger GRAS standards are going to be winning brands.
Yeah, interesting. I think part of the concern too is with if there is less enforcement, what you're saying you don't think is going to happen, which is probably good news. It moves to the states. We're seeing that in some cases. Rick mentioned that on the last panel. Or it moves to plaintiffs' lawyers and class action suits that don't really serve anyone. And so that's one of the concerns. We'll see how that goes. And then,
Bill, I just want to add to what Callie was saying. There's this idea that's being floated around that when you get rid of personnel at the FDA, that it's going to make it less effective. It's been a complete, utter failure to the American people over the last, 50 years since they allowed these chemicals into our food supply under this thing called the GRAS loophole, where the chemical companies themselves look at the safety data. Even if the FDA says no, it's not allowed, they still put it in the food environment. So they've been an utter failure. And then when I look at like what's happening in the media and how they're using this to make this administration look bad, is they talk about, Jim Jones, who was the head of US Foods, and I had the opportunity to meet with him in early January. We brought to him, I met with him with several food advocates, and we brought to him specific issues that the FDA needed to address, like finding a fertility drug in Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, finding crazy levels of heavy metals in school food, talking about why it took so long to get Red 3 banned when it was banned in cosmetics 30 years ago. And hey, have you followed up about the fact that Red number 40 hasn't been reviewed in over a decade? The sense of urgency was lacking. And he's right to leave the organization. And I was so excited actually to see that Kyle DeMantis, who quickly got put into that position, because he's got intellectual honesty about these issues that are plaguing the American food system. And then now we've got Dr. Marty McCary going through his confirmation today, and he wants to look at the root cause of why so many people are sick. So he's going to have, again, that intellectual honesty that we haven't had in this regulatory body for so long.
Look at supplements like food. It's the same thing, and I think there's opportunity for engagement with the administration on this. And I wouldn't say it's a hands-off attitude to food. I think they're actually saying we actually need more scrutiny at the FDA. The FDA has lost its way when it comes to food and supplements. So, yeah.
Let's talk about science. Del, I wonder if you could take this. What do you see as the role of science, particularly in dietary supplements, in an RFK, HHS?
Well, I would hope that the whole world that I've grown up in, when you look at supplements, the things that I've cared about, it looks like the entire regulatory industry, which the pharmaceutical industry loves, because they're the ones that can handle the $100 million randomized control trial. Then they say to all of you, you can't say anything, you can't declare what you think your product can do. And so you're stuck in this place where they're manipulating their studies. You know that they're putting out a bunch of baloney. It can't be proven. Their science is totally rigged by the industry itself. They're paying for their own safety trials. They're paying for their own efficacy trials. And then the FDA is signing off on it. Now you're worried that we're going to downsize an entire system that's designed to fight for the drug company and against supplement companies? That's insane. You know? we finally, we finally have an opportunity where you have someone really looking and, one of the things behind the scenes, and I don't know if they'll get there, but very interesting conversations. I didn't realize that the FDA original mandate was just for safety and quality. Purity. So it was only there to determine, is it safe, and is what's in this bottle exactly what's written on the label? It didn't get into efficacy. The pharmaceutical industry was the one that said, get into efficacy, because that's what made it impossible for any supplement to ever be able to say anything. We'll be the only ones that can afford a randomized controlled trial for $100 million. The FDA will sign off and say, well, now it can do blah, 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 and that's where this industry, the supplement industry, lost control of the entire world. Imagine if you went back to a place where safety is all that you have to prove. Prove that your product is safe. Vitamins are safe. And then let's let the market decide if it's efficacious or not. Now the drug company will be on the same playing field as you saying, we believe our product does this, and your practitioners get to decide if it does. And you'll go to the practitioners that are having success instead of letting the pharmaceutical industry dictate what you're allowed to hear and what you're not allowed to hear. That is a future where we see a huge change that could happen for the supplement industry.
He is so right on, and I do want to say, just to double click on what Del said, there is a desire from what I'm seeing for deregulation in the FDA approval pathways. Right now, Big Pharma's made it that it's billions of dollars to get any type of therapeutic through. So being able to prove supplementation through FDA regulatory pathways to eventually get actual insurance reimbursement would be, I think, a goal of the administration of Marty McCary. But it's all about informed consent, transparency, and then getting medical dollars to the most efficacious treatment, which we've been gaslighting in this country to think is only a synthetic pill made by Pfizer and not core vitamins and supplementation.
We could have had an hour discussion with each of these panelists, and we are out of time. I am going to ask another question. I'm interested in the audience here. It felt like this was going to be potentially a controversial panel, and I'm hearing a lot of applause. I'm hearing a lot of support.
Some people are.
My concern as I hear that and see a bunch of empty seats is who's not here, who's not in the room. It seems like we're sort of,
We were 30 minutes late. Just saying, we got a big expo over there. I don't know. I mean, we're 30 minutes late.
And so it's interesting, and I started here with you, Vonnie, and maybe I'll just open it just quickly. What is the mechanism for making this? I know you probably feel like you've already answered this, but how do we make it? We've got people in here screaming like in support, and people out there saying, I don't even want to be in the room. Perhaps, I don't know what's on their minds, but how does this become just an opportunity to move this message forward and not a political one? Just any final words?
I think results. I mean, in the end, all that any of us can do is deliver results. MAHA.io, which is a website that we're launching now, I want to build an ecosystem for all of natural health and holistic health. I want to be able to find those functional medicine doctors, those holistic doctors that are finding ways to help you be healthy, be healthier, the fitness instructors, nutritionalists. There is plenty of the hospital system. Every one of us can find a doctor that'll drug us. But how do we find that system that's actually going to lead us on a path to actual health? So MAHA will be driving that. And we'll be working with the administration as far as it is with RFK Jr. to try and get, as much freedom to move into a holistic direction in this country. But we shouldn't be waiting for the government. We should never expect the government to fix it. Health should be in our hands. It's been taken out of our hands. It's being run by the pharmaceutical industry that has totally corrupted our government, our regulatory agencies. But if we're going to take it back in our hands, we're the ones that are going to have to say, hey, if you want health, forget about what the politics are around it. What is the best procedure? Who are the healthiest people here? And if it ends up being the Republican states that have more freedoms around their supplements and more freedoms and are maybe getting insurance carriers to, cover things that Democratic states aren't, then we're going to see that difference. You're going to start seeing a divide. And what's crazy to me, it blows my mind that I'm going to watch the Republicans carry the supplement industry and the holistic health industry and the chiropractors and the acupuncturists into the promised land, while the Democrats, as you pointed out, sat on their hands every time we talk about natural health. I think slowly but surely, this room will be filling up as people recognize, wait a minute, am I not going to stand with the people that are fighting for me, and the industry that's, and the government that's fighting for me? I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. I care about winning. That's all I've ever cared about, and I think that's why, former Democrat, I don't know if you're where you're at. I don't know what I am. I'm politically marooned. I'm marooned, Right now, all I know is we've got Robert Kennedy Jr., who I doubt would call himself a Republican, running our regulatory agencies. The same guy that cleaned up our environment, something we used to celebrate. Let's just put the partisanship aside. It's going to take every one of us talking to each other. It's opening up a dialogue. Turn off MSNBC, turn off CNN, turn off Fox, turn off the thing that's dividing us, and let's start talking to each other. That's how we get around this.
Thank you, Doug. Go ahead.
This has literally been the best thing for this country, actually, getting Republicans on board. Because I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone, being asked to be on Sean Hannity on Fox News and talking about glyphosate and Roundup. Not in a million years could I have put that on my bingo card, okay? We have an opportunity like no other to bring everyone together on these issues and teach people what's been done to our food system and how to undo it, and to support natural and organic brands. It's the reason why I started my organic brand, Truvani, because I was sick of all the additives that were in protein powder. I was sick of all the bars out there that had natural flavors and other ingredients that I know many of the people in this room use, but we don't use those ingredients because they trick your brain. And so it's an opportunity where we're fighting back against the companies that are now re-engineering their food to avoid the Ozempic issue, right? They're actually finding different ways to circumpath Ozempic and still create an addictive flavor in a product. We're fighting back against that. We're fighting back against the food industry that wants to continue profits over people. And we're putting people before profits. We're putting health before profits. And we see that in our bottom lines every single day when we choose to pick an organic, natural ingredient versus another one. So this is an opportunity, again, to bring the entire country together. And it's amazing for the country, is what I think.
Thank you, Bonnie. And do you have a quick answer for us, Kelly?
I'd say one thing to kind of answer your question about the divide is that, this is a company of leading natural businesses. And let's just look at it from a raw perspective as leaders of businesses in the room. There is a true cultural bipartisan moment, aside from politics, where people on the left and right, where Berkeley hippies and Sean Hannity are waking up to the toxins in our food and the need to put root cause health at the center of healthcare. We have a person in charge at the HHS and a president who is adding voice to that message and power to that message. And I just can't express this enough. And our company, TrueMed, is working with a lot of companies in here, and something I'm really proud to be doing, and I think every company should really think about doing. I've seen it be so successful, is you don't need to get partisan, you don't need to say even MAHA, but channeling your customers as advocates and channeling your own companies to engage. I've gone to DC and engaged with people in this room and other leaders of companies, and senators really need to hear this. We need to keep this drumbeat up. Aside from the partisanship, we need to marshal our customers to call senators, which really matters. The fact that Bobby got in against all the opposition from the most powerful industries in the country was because of calls. We can keep this momentum going. And at the end of the day, the North Star of this movement is benefiting businesses in this room. It is incentivizing less toxic food. It is incentivizing potentially more root cause supplementation over drugs. It's creating more research. Jay Bhattacharya yesterday gave great testimony about this. He said the number one goal of the NIH, the number one goal is to study root causes of why people are getting sick and interventions that are actionable for that. It's more research to underlie what you guys are doing. There's a true moment here, and whether you're engaging in a partisanship or not, marshaling your companies, speaking out, educating members of Congress, local lawmakers, as Dell's group is doing so well, there's a real opportunity here. So we're all, I think, all just here, to help in any way, and we're working with a lot of companies to just marshal voices. Let's add to this bipartisan movement. And again, my goal is that in 2028, the Democrat and the Republican are arguing who's more MAHA. And I think we're on the verge of that happening.
I just want to very quickly say, I was with Robert Kennedy Jr. when he finally made that decision to join President Trump. It was one of the most difficult decisions I've watched anyone have to make, to walk away from a party that his family has represented, has branded his entire life. He is not a Republican. He walked across that aisle and he said it when he stepped down from the independent campaign. He said, we have to love our children more than we hate each other. That is the message everyone at this conference has to start thinking about. Are we going to put our divide aside?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vonnie. Thank you, Del. Thank you, Callie. Callie will be keynote speaker at NBJ Summit in July, so we're excited about that. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for staying, and thank you for coming to Expo.
Thank you.